What it do, Niner fam? Well, today we're going to show some homage to the OG Fred Dean. Now, I know a lot of you youngsters on here probably don't even know who Fred Dean is. Because before you had a Nick Bosa, which is a baller, you had Fred Dean. Now, Fred Dean was on the line causing much havoc. See, and that's back then when, look, it was all right to hurt the quarterback, to get to the quarterback and put pain on him. See, you had to be an extra, like I said, that's why them quarterbacks back then, look, let me explain something to you. To sit in the pocket, it wasn't too many all running around. It wasn't too much of that. Because if you got outside the pocket and one of these cats get hold of you, all the rules they got now, like, soon as all of because they made a rule for Tom Brady. The Tom Brady rule. Once Tom Brady got his leg broke, oh no, no. You are not to touch him. You're not to touch Tom Brady. See, they had a whole thing called the Brady Rule. Go look it up. If you came, Tom Brady didn't even need an O-line. If you came by his legs, you came around him, he'll throw the ball dead, look at the referee and say, hey, man, he was in my space. You getting a penalty. Look, go back and look. They was finding, Steelers defensive end, James Harrison, so much. He ended up leaving the Steelers, going to the Patriots. I guess he said, if you can't beat them, join them, because they was finding James Harrison so much it was ridiculous. He was one of the ones why they stopped vicious defenders. But nevertheless, when you had people like Fred Dean, you had to stay in the pocket. You got to remember, Joe Montana wasn't a big guy, see how big Cam Newton is? Go back and look at when Cam Newton was starting. He was a big guy, man. You didn't have no big dudes like that. That was, Joe Montana was not a big guy. That's why you have to rely on your offensive line, and you better be an accurate quarterback. That ball better come out and it better be accurate. Because you're not finna be taking too many hits. Now you can give them a little late hit or a shove or whatever it is, and it is what it is. It's not too bad. But back then, yeah, they not giving you little. Oh man, they trying to knock your head off. So you have to stay in the pocket, and you have to have a clean pocket. That's why your O-line was so important. That's why they're important to this day. But a lot of people don't really put too much into the O-line like they should. And then they don't like to get rid of a lot of O-linemen. You want to have continuity, big word, for your O-line to, be together. You can't just be piecing together people, because one guard might work and the center might work, but the tackle might not work. And you got to be able to block these guys, man. And back then, the Niners had a nice defensive line. Nice. They had some big maulers on that line. So Fred Dean was a beast. So let me give you his stats real quick. Hold on. Now, Fred Dean, NFL defensive end, indicted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2008. His career stats include 2 Super Bowl wins, 4-time Pro Bowl selection, 2 first-team All-Pro selections, 237 total tackles. He holds a franchise record to the 49ers with 6 sacks in a single game in '83, and his 17.5 sacks that led the NFC. He was a flat-out beast. That's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? So you got to give respect to Fred Dean. See, like I said, a lot of these new cats, they don't really be knowing, they just, and I understand, we got the Niner gang, and, people, we hype and all, we see Bosa, and we got Mikael Williams. And if you can understand, that's why somebody like Saleh is bringing it back. You got to remember when Shanahan first came there, what did he do? You know, he was focused on, you know, trying to fix the team. He had to gut the team. You know, when Shanahan first came, NaVar Bowman was still there, but him and NaVar Bowman was at odds. You got to remember, NaVar Bowman is basically a grown man, and then you coming in with this new philosophy, and it just wasn't going to work. If people don't know, Shanahan was going to ship NaVar Bowman off to the Saints for a 3rd-round pick. See? And Lynch stopped that. See, that's why you had to have Lynch. Lynch was never a general manager before, but they were not going to allow the team, a team like the Niners, just be, you know, let Shanahan have full control. Because you got some coaches that have full control. So you had to have something that's going to be like a mediator. And you go get Lynch, who, as a player, he was well respected. Well respected. And so when you got players like NaVar Bowman, and then you have coaches like Lynch, which is a young guy who really was never in the league like that, and his father was a coach, and, you know, they were at odds. You can get somebody like Lynch to come in the middle of them and say, hey, man, you know, this guy doesn't want to be here, and he doesn't want to go to the Saints because he's out here in the Bay Area. That's why NaVar Bowman, if you remember, he ended up going to the Raiders. Why? The Raiders were in Oakland. If you live in San Francisco or you're playing in San Francisco, you don't have to move your family. The Raiders were right there. That's why you have people like Jerry Rice, and most of the Niners used to go to the Raiders. We had Charlie Garner. You had a bunch of ex-Niners that went to the Raiders, not because they wanted to go. They went there because they didn't have to move their home. That's like if you're playing for the Giants and they boot you out and you go to the Jets, you're already right there. Or you're playing for the Steelers and the Eagles are right there. You're not knowing they're in the same place. So, you know, when you had, what they did was with the philosophy for the Niners right after they got rid of all the veterans and they gutted the team. What they did was, okay, what did they do? They just start getting bunch of pieces. Saleh still stuck with the same philosophy. That defensive front was solid. You got to remember how we got to the Super Bowl before. I keep telling everybody, what was the secondary? Name all the people from the secondary. Now, you can Google it now, but the secondary, when we went to the Super Bowl with Saleh and Kyle Shanahan the first time with Garoppolo, the secondary, remember we had to go get Richard Sherman because basically you needed a coach on the field. Not somebody who Sherman was already coming off an injury from being with the Seahawks. So we bring him because he already knew the defense and he had to shore up that secondary. He had to shore up that secondary. I ain't gonna say that that's not Saleh's, he ain't really that's not his strength. The strength comes from the front 4, front 7. But all around defense, Saleh gets them hyped up. But that's why we had brought Richard Sherman in. So, but Saleh did get that front 4. They was nice. So that's, you know, he went back to the old school. So if you look at what he's doing right now with Mykel Williams and Alfred Morris, and you got C.J. West, and you already have Bosa, and you still got Fred Warner. And the secondary, look at the secondary. Remember, Ronaldo Green was there last year. Diamond Lenore been there. We waiting on Mustafa. You know what I'm saying? And Jair Brown, these people been there. So, but now look at Upton Stout. He's a rookie he just came along quick. You don't really have to put too much into them. So all that to say is, you know, that's why the defense looked the way it do. We're bringing back the old school. So you have to give respect to somebody like Fred Dean. Okay, you have to. It's pivotal. You know what I'm saying? In football and with the Niners. So that's my, soliloquy about the Niner OG Hall of Famer. Let me know what y'all think. Leave it in the comments. Peace. I'm out of here.